Hello and welcome to another live Wrestling with Johners, part of the Johners podcasting network, of course. And I've got a very special guest with me. We lined this one up a few weeks ago. Very excited to be speaking to Lee McAteer from Wrestling Travel. Lee, how the devil are you, my friend?
I'm good, John, and thank you so much for the invitation. Very, very humbling, and I was almost late. If everyone that works everything, so. I think I made this one by about 20 seconds, so hopefully no one noticed, right?
Yeah, nobody noticed, had you not have mentioned, but there we go. So for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be speaking to Lee about his wrestling fandom, how it all got started for him, how he got started with Wrestling Travel, the very origins of all of that. We'll talk about his other business ventures and what the future holds for Wrestling Travel as well. I know some very, very exciting things. But Lee, first of all, checking back on your website, I think it's wrestlingtravel.org, earlier on this week in preparation for this interview with yourself. There's some events you're publicising, you're advertising, you're already starting to sell wrestling travel packages for 2022 and 2023. What can you tell us about what's available on your website so far? The packages are live, aren't they, Lee?
Yeah, they're live. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is make up for lost time. Because the things that we had planned for what was WrestleMania last year was going to be pretty spectacular, especially with some of the special guests that we'd lined up. And we weren't going to tell any of the Wrestling Travel family, because that's how we refer to anybody that comes on a WT trip is family to us. And we had so many amazing special guests, and it was such a shame that, of course, what happened. But my word, we're going to be coming back with a bang. But at the same time, what we're trying to do is that we don't want to have too many people on the trips, because otherwise you don't get that, in my opinion, that great customer service and ultimately what we want WT to now be. At the same time, very blessed. I've got some much better people than me that are working on the brand, that's for sure. And I've just become the unfortunate ugly-looking face that seems to be the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing, like all businesses around the world, and yours is no different, you've been keeping your ear close to the ground over the last year or so, waiting for that news on when flight restrictions or travel restrictions might be lifted, and when large venues that might host a Wrestle Kingdom or WrestleMania might be back open again. When did you kind of decide, right, let's kind of hit the button on this and let's get things kind of moving again, and let's get some shows for 2022 on the website then?
Well, the thing is that there's such a massive demand from people to travel, and there is an even bigger demand right now in my circle of friends for people that want to go to a show, and specifically a wrestling show.
Yeah.
So when it was announced exactly where the locations were going to be, that's when we really went for it, because we know what we can do and we want to give people something to look forward to. And the payment plans that we put together make it more affordable over a longer period of time. It's fair to say that WrestleMania in LA is turning into be probably our most popular package ever, which is crazy considering it's a little way out. But I'm sure you're the same, Jonas, but we're just so desperate to get back, and hopefully we're now seeing the end in sight, especially in the UK, and now that things like TNT Wrestling, Progress, Wrestle Carnival, that's obviously the new one that's coming out, and everybody seems to be ready and raring to go, and we wanted to be at the forefront of that, and I'd like to think that that's where we're at, and what we've been very lucky for is a massive shout out to Justin Clapper, because he's really kept the Wrestling Travel brand viable during what, let's be frank, it's a travel brand in a pandemic.
Yeah, the lockdown sessions.
Yeah, absolutely, the lockdown sessions, and he's made some great contacts, and I feel bad because I don't have the chance to sometimes watch all the lockdown sessions. So when I do get the chance to see it, there's some brilliant content on there, and a lot of stuff that I would dare say a lot of dirt sheets could make a lot of stuff from,
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to mention that, I mean, well, what's the reception like? I'm not going to kind of ask you to give away numbers or figures, but I'm guessing that you've had a good reception to some of the packages that are available on the website so far. You mentioned that WrestleMania for 2023 has been one of your fastest selling events so far. So I'm guessing that, as you said, we're all hungry wrestling fans, can't wait to get on a plane and see the next big event. So I'm guessing that reception and sales have been quite buoyant so far.
They've been fantastic. And I also, as well, as I can't thank all of the WT family that put our faith in us, because let's be frank, it is a travel brand in a pandemic. And again, massive shout out to everybody that's been so good to the WT brand, because ultimately, we're not some great big huge massive corporation. It was for fans, by fans. And yes, okay, it's fair to say the WT brand made a few mistakes in the beginning, but to say that we've come roaring back would be an understatement. And I just can't wait for us to show everybody what we can really do. And I mean, it was funny because it's one of the reasons why. I mean, I'm in Portugal at the moment. Not that I'm trying to make everybody jealous on that, but I mean, the reason how I ended up here was because I was literally stuck in the States. And the reason why I was stuck in the States was because last year, because of the way my arrangements set up for WT, it looked as though I had to pick up what would have been about $100,000 worth of tickets. And to cut a long story short, I didn't know. Obviously, we all know what Vince is like. No one can rule out what he's going to do. So was Mania going to be on? Was it not? And so I thought, well, I'm going to have to take the chance. I'm going to have to stay and see what happens. And then ended up stuck in the States for, I think it was 3 months. And then I had the opportunity to come to Portugal where my dad lives. And I thought, well, I can go to Portugal, I can go into lockdown. And I thought, well, we'll come to Portugal for a month. And, I've now been here for, I think it's 9 months, and couldn't get back for the Wembley final for Tranmere. And I haven't even seen my beloved club play now since, I think it was Bolton away last season, So it's been a crazy, crazy time. And I'm sure everyone's the same, but we're just all looking to have some normality now,
Absolutely. And so, like I say, just coming away from wrestling travel for a moment, let's talk a little bit about your wrestling fandom then, Lee. What sort of wrestling are you watching at the moment? What sort of wrestlers or storylines have got you captivated in 2021?
I love AEW. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. I was fortunate to be there for their first ever big massive event before it became AEW. Obviously headlined by Cody and the Bucks and whatnot, and Ross Olcock, who was there with me at the time, we were looking at each other going, "This is something very, very special, very, very special." And then from that, we then built up the relationships there, and I just think what they've done and what Tony Khan has done is magnificent. And okay, I appreciate that I'm an older demographic now. And maybe that harms WWE in a little way, but it's the first wrestling show that I watch is AEW, and I tell you a real fun one for me is my AmeriCamp business, where we work with summer camps. So one of my good mates in the summer camp industry went to camp with MJF.
No way!
So God, absolutely hilarious, so funny. And MJF decided, Scott Freeman decided to ask MJF to come onto like a private video for all of the campers that are going to Camp Westmont. I don't think it ever came out in public. Literally, MJF's like in character and ripping everybody. It's absolutely hilarious. And so then we started chatting away and realizing that there was that common connection there. But no, I mean, AEW is definitely the one for me. I have to say, I think Progress are now doing some really good stuff as well. They've obviously gone through a difficult time, but I do think they're going to come back bigger and stronger. And I enjoyed part of the old school SmackDown the other night. That was pretty cool.
SmackDown are doing some pretty good things at the moment. Yeah, I mean, out of the two, Raw and SmackDown wins hands down every single week. But there is some good viewing from WWE. Certainly, when you talk about SmackDown and NXT, I have to agree with you regarding AEW. I have been a bit hit and miss regarding watching Dynamite over the last couple of months, but I have caught. I think that the blood and guts hype kind of pulled me back in, and I watched last week's show and this week's show, and I'm kind of back on board again. But yes, they do know how to pull off a good weekly show for sure.
They do. I mean, it's got me captivated, I must say. I really, really enjoy it. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that the biggest spectacle, I think, will always be WrestleMania, your Royal Rumbles. But we've started doing AEW packages, and they've started to become quite popular, and people are asking questions all the time. And I think as we start to move out of the pandemic even more so, I think there's going to be a much more of a thirst for people wanting to go to the AEW events in person.
Yeah, and that was a question I was going to say for later on. But I mean, looking ahead to 2022, are you kind of checking the calendars of all of these AEWs and WWEs, and you're kind of getting the packages live pretty much as soon as you can?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of changed tact a little bit in the fact that at one point we were going to be offering packages for literally every single pay-per-view that was going. But we changed that because we wanted to give that as good a customer service as we could. And because to be frank about it, when I first went to WrestleMania, I didn't have a clue what was going on in terms of the other shows, WrestleMania Access, all these different things. And I felt like I really missed out. And it was that idea and that concept that I thought to myself, there must be a company that does this, that looks after flights, looks after this. I'm there on the phone going, and I couldn't find anything. I thought, am I missing something here? So literally, when I started it, and big shout out to Ross Alcock who helped me tremendously with it. I was like, wow, this could be something that could be really quite special. And I thought, right, because I like giving myself challenges, Jonas, and I gave myself 500 quid, and I thought, right, okay, I've got some contacts legitimately in the wrestling industry. Let's see if I can make a few calls, see what we can do. And then we created it, and away we went, and here we are now. And I think our Facebook page has got 80,000 followers. We're verified on Facebook, verified on Twitter, etc. Truthfully, I think WT, in terms of looking back, will probably be my greatest ever creation when it comes to all the brands I've been a part of or created. I think WT will be the one, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about that then, because I'm guessing that Wrestling Travel was one of your first ventures. Tell us how we'll talk about your wrestling fandom in a moment, Lee, but how did becoming a wrestling fan then transpire into starting Wrestling Travel? I mean, you've just mentioned that you thought that there would have been something out there very similar to what you eventually ended up creating. You found out there wasn't. You realized there was a gap in the market. But what was that kind of light bulb moment that made you think, yeah, well, let's launch Wrestling Travel?
Well, again, it was WrestleMania 30, New Orleans,
right?
And for my birthday, my ex-girlfriend got me tickets to WrestleMania, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And she said, well, I've bought the tickets, but you need to sort out all the rest. I thought, oh yeah, absolutely, happy days, no worries. And trying to sort flights, hotels, making sure that we were there on time for all these different things, it became such a hassle. And to be honest with you, that was my light bulb moment. And that was something that was in the back of my mind, that I wanted to do something with that idea and concept. But I didn't end up doing that for, I think it was maybe two and a half years later. And it was only because, quite frankly, I was bored in the summer, and I wanted to give myself a challenge. And I thought, well, I've got quite a few different ideas. I've always got ideas, but for better or for worse. Most of them are crap, but the odd one does okay. And I thought, actually, I think this one could do all right. And straight away, I could see that it popped, and then ended up doing some business with Jeff Jarrett, who's obviously doing some great stuff now with Conrad Thompson with his new podcast, which I'm really, really happy for him, because I learned a lot from Jeff, and Jeff did a lot for us. And I'll never forget the time when he came down to Tranmere and started playing footy with some of the less fortunate kids. And I remember, and we had this we were calling Jimmy Bullard out, and the whole idea was that we were actually going to try and create this massive wrestling show at Prenton Park with Jimmy Bullard taking on Jeff. And truthfully, Jimmy was scared, man. I mean, he was scared. He was really, really scared. And of course, from that, because of my relationships, I was telling all the wrestlers about Tranmere Rovers Football Club, and they were like, yeah, we'll support the Rovers. Yeah, we'll. So then all of a sudden it was like, well, how are all of a sudden all these different well-known wrestlers supporting Tranmere or wearing the kits? And when I did the stuff for the Love of Wrestling, interviewing Bret Hart live for Fight TV in the middle of the ring, and then afterwards presented him a Tranmere Rovers jersey and all that kind of stuff, it was really, really cool. And of course, since that, it's fair to say that so many football teams have tried to get on the bandwagon of getting involved with wrestlers purely because of the social media connections and whatnot. But ultimately, we were probably one of the first ones to really properly utilize it. But if you'd have told me where WT is now from when we first created it, I wouldn't believe you. But at the same time, it's because I've been very blessed that I've had some wonderful people around me.
Indeed. Let's try and connect the dots then, if we can, then, Lee. So tell us about you as a wrestling fan. When did you kind of first come across wrestling? Was it through friends or family members? Do you remember when you first kind of clapped eyes on pro wrestling? I'm guessing as a youngster.
Sky Sports. It was around SummerSlam '92.
Yep.
Rebecca Hitman Hart, my absolute hero, versus British Bulldog. And then ultimately, my dad, for Christmas, got us some tickets to go and watch one of the live shows at the GMX in Manchester. And I was that little kid with the glasses. I wanted the Intercontinental belt. That was the one I wanted. Didn't want the WWF one at the time. And that was when I got hooked. And I had family in the States who also enjoyed wrestling, and they would tell me bits about Macho Man and the lovely Elizabeth and everything else. And that really what got me hooked. And then years later, the thing that really started to interest me more and more was how WWE marketed their product, because I couldn't understand why other companies weren't copying the same kind of ideas and thought processes for what WWE was doing. And if truth be told, all of the brands that I've created are very much inspired about the way WWE has been advertised, whether that be initially through Twitter, then of course, Facebook, Instagram. Gosh, I think we even had Tout at one stage. Do you remember Tout when WWE had shares in that?
I remember that. Yeah, absolutely, I do.
We tried having that, but there's so much that you can learn, and there's a fantastic book by Eric Bischoff called "Controversy Creates Cash."
I've got it. I've read it. Yeah, very good.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And of course, then when again for Fight TV, and I'm in the middle of the ring with Bischoff, Flair, Scott Hall, Sid Vicious, Kevin Nash, and Booker T, and I'm there thinking, read your book, I know, and just hanging out with these guys. I have to say that was one messy session. That was. I'll never forget when, because I was speaking to the wrestlers, and I said, "Oh, is anybody hungry?" And a few of them like, "Yeah, we're really hungry." So I got Mad Dog Mike Angus to go and basically go and get a ridiculous amount of McDonald's, and we're there in the hotel next to the convention center, and next minute, literally, we're chucking cheeseburgers like frisbee, and Marty Jannetty's there going, "Oh yeah, I'll have some." Meanwhile, I kid you not, he's got a stack of cash from the convention in one hand, a cheeseburger in the other, and he looks at Ted DiBiase and goes, Ted, can you look after my money? And I was like, this is hilarious. It's like absolutely brilliant stuff. And I think there's a video of it actually on Mad Dog's Facebook. Absolutely hilarious. It was so funny. But yeah, that was a real pinch yourself moment, especially doing the Bret Hart interview and the reception that it got, because Bret obviously got very emotional, because the way I interviewed him it wasn't your typical I'm looking for clickbait. It was, I'm actually somebody that was that little kid, the Bret, that was me as a kid. And I wanted people to get to know the real Bret Hart rather than the usual, the Montreal screw job, the horrendous family tragedies. And I'd like to think, at least from the feedback, that I managed to do that. And I remember in the green room afterwards, and he said to me, he said, "Kid," he said, "that was one of the greatest interviews I've had in a long, long time." And
that's really high praise. That's wonderful.
He said, "I really, really appreciate the way you went about that with me, because it's very rare that somebody is on a level with me such as that." And that really, really meant a lot. And
especially with you being such a huge Bret Hart fan growing up as well, Lee, that must have meant so much to you, and having that opportunity to speak to him and to interview him, hell of a pleasure. I mean, I've met Bret a couple of times at conventions, and I was there at SummerSlam, Wembley Stadium, 1992, as a
nice.
16-year-old Johners, and it was a wonderful occasion. I know Stewie Palmer was there, but he was a bit younger than me. But yeah, hell of an occasion. We've got a question from somebody that's watching at home, and thank you to everybody that's watching and listening to this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Get your questions in for Lee if you want to know more about wrestling travel or about his wrestling fandom, what the future holds for wrestling travel. One thing that we've kind of covered, but this Facebook user says, I'm not overly familiar with wrestling travel. Do you do New Japan packages? So is there anything for New Japan on the website at the moment? Any packages for New Japan for 2021 or beyond?
Yeah, we've done an amazing New Japan package. Of course, what's difficult at the moment is that we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but ultimately, yes. And we had a really successful trip down there. So yes is the honest answer, and we've had quite a few chats with New Japan over the last few months. So I think that I think that trip's only going to get more popular. I think, but it's a fantastic package, great location, and what we have is that we have a translator on the ground who then will take you to all of the best places. So, for example, you get to have that famous, go to that famous steakhouse. You get to see all the things that you wouldn't necessarily understand if you didn't have a tour guide there with you. So yes is the honest answer. And the funny thing, John, is, and this is something that always gets me, is should I have called it Wrestle Travel or Wrestling Travel? Because the amount of times I get Wrestle Travel rather than Wrestling Travel. Maybe I got the name wrong, but no. But if whoever asked the question, happy to get one of the team members to send some information across.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit more about your wrestling fandom. I'm guessing that you went to some of the shows as a kid, WWE. I'm assuming when they came over to the UK. You mentioned going to the GMEX in Manchester. Did you get to go to the shows much when they came over to the UK, or did you see much UK wrestling? What was your kind of live wrestling experiences when you were kind of younger, or as a younger fan?
Well, truthfully, the main one was going to the GMEX, and just little things like, for example, I remember when Papa Shango was coming out, I was going, Dad, don't smell it in, don't breathe it in, and of course, he became the Godfather and ended up backstage with him for Fight Forever, and I remember he was like, Lee, I need to go and get some fish and chips. Where do we go and get fish and chips? And meanwhile, Cody Rhodes was absolutely obsessed with Nando's. Honestly, I've never seen somebody eat so much Nando's in life. But that was a big thing for me back then. My dad, who's a massive influence on me, he used to run leisure centres amongst other stuff, and I remember going to see I've got no idea what promotion it was, but it was like an independent show when I was probably 12 or 13. I thought, wow, that's really, really cool. But then what really kick-started for me again was when I was living in Tampa, in Riverview, the WWE Raw was at Tampa, and I was like, wow, we've got to go to this. This would be amazing. And Kat Tomlinson was working for me at the time, and because our motto was Team Bring It, we were like, we're going to take over the world. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And we're there wearing the T-shirts and watching it live. And I remember the Rock came out. I think it was the Rock. Oh no, so that was the one in Miami actually a few years later. But it was just brilliant. It gave me that buzz again, and so then they say never meet your heroes, but I've been very, very fortunate to meet some really, really cool people. And for me, you just treat people how you want to be treated. I know the picture that was used to promote the show was with me, Jesse Ventura, Jeff, and of course the main man behind Apollo Creed. And I mean that itself was so funny. I mean, I remember behind the scenes and Jesse Ventura signing all this stuff, and there's me, Jesse, Jeff, and I can't remember his name now, but he was the kid from Stranger Things who wears the hat. I've only seen a couple of shows on it, and we just chatting away about things, and Jesse Ventura's talking about WrestleMania going to Michigan, and Jesse's going, if Vince wants to come to Michigan, he's got to run it through me, Jeff. You know this. You know this. He's not coming to Michigan if he ain't running through me, Jeff. And Jeff's like, oh, I completely get it, Jesse. You know, I understand. And then the Stranger Things kids going, who's Vince? I'm just like, wow. You know, it was such a
completely different generation. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a real interesting set of people that day. That's for sure.
So, I mean, thinking back to my WrestleMania experience, and I've only been to one WrestleMania, but I was lucky enough to go to WrestleMania 34, which would have been in 2018, so 3 years ago now. New Orleans, an absolutely fantastic area, everything within walking distance. But I must admit, I hadn't been to anything as big as that before, so to organise the flights, organise the hotel, the tickets for WrestleMania, and all the different events that I went to, Lee. It was proper stressful for me, to be honest with you. Now, I'm guessing at Wrestling Travel, your packages, they're quite flexible. You can probably bolt things on and take things off and tailor them to your needs to a certain degree. But Wrestling Travel kind of takes that stress away from all of your stress and worry you would normally have to do, piecing it all together yourself. Tell us a bit about the packages and how Wrestling Travel can kind of help you away from that stress.
Well, the first things first is what we do is that, of course, we've got to have some generic packages out there to give a line in the sand, so to speak, in terms of what you can and can't do. But a lot of packages that we do are from people that are saying to us, right, we need to fly from X airport, and this is what we need to do. We want to have an extra 5 days. We want to do a Disney experience. So we do a lot of custom stuff. And because we've got the experience of certain different locations. So, for example, for LA, I personally went to the hotel. I checked it all out, and again, it was so annoying that you know what happened. But anyway, we are where we are. So what we do is that, and I'll be frank with you, John, is we learned the hard way. Our first WrestleMania, we had a lot of problems. We got let down by a hotel. It was terrible. It was one of the saddest moments of my life because we had something so special and we got let down. And ultimately we sued the booking agent who we were working with to help provide us a hotel. But it wasn't the point. You know, the reality is that we wanted to offer that best experience. So sometimes, you know, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
So for example, for New Orleans, we've got that down. You know, if it ever goes there again, we've got it down to a T. Texas, you know, I've personally done the one in Dallas, which was crazy. I mean, the amount of people in the AT&T Stadium was great. I mean, and it's like little things what people don't realize. I remember having to get back to our hotel from Dallas, and because of the surge on the Uber, it cost me almost $200 for an Uber. Well, what we do is we'll put on like transfers and coaches, so you can literally just go straight to the bus, straight back to the hotel, so you're not dealing with any of that kind of stuff. And then what we're also going to plan, and I'm sure it's going to be the same moving forward, is that we had some really cool special guests that not only were going to be on the bus, but we're also going to be with us in the VIP booths for Raw and SmackDown. And ironically, the first guest that we had then had to pull out because they'd signed a deal with AEW and WWE had known about it. And we're like, oh gosh, okay. So, and you know, he might not be allowed in the building, but right, okay, we'll do what we can. But that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create so many surprises. Because it'd be a lot easier for me to be able to say in the packages, right, X celebrity is going to be at this particular point, X celebrity is going to be at that point. But I want to surprise people. But I appreciate that's going to come with time to say, okay, which WWE Hall of Fame are they going to meet next, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's what we do, is that we do a lot of research now because of what happened in our first ever event. But to say we're bigger and better than that would be an understatement. And you can see that from everything that's now come out and the social media presence that we've now gained.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I've heard nothing but good things about the last few years that the Wrestling Travel have been able to kind of fly people to WrestleMania. And you've done Wrestle Kingdom for the last, well, besides this past year, you've done Wrestle Kingdom for a couple of consecutive years. Is that correct?
Two consecutive Januaries. Yeah.
And do you get the chance to you obviously get the chance to go out there with the fans, part of the WT family. What were some of the kind of best memories you've had of traveling with Wrestling Travel? Some of the experiences you've had either with the fans or at the events. Can you tell us about some of those times out in America or Japan with the Wrestling Travel family?
I think that the best one we had was we had a lady call us up and she said, I want to surprise my other half with a trip to WrestleMania. Great, okay, well, that's great. But there's a bigger surprise for him. Right, okay. I want to propose to him in New York.
Wow.
Right. Okay, so no pressure, and so that was really, to see that moment between them. That was really, really cool. That's probably the biggest standout moment for sure. But the biggest thing for me is that I just want all of the people that come on our trips to be happy. We're very fortunate. We've got an amazing guy called Cal, who, if Cal's watching, massive shout out to Cal. He's just such a wonderful, wonderful human being, and he's amazing creative, by the way, amazing. But also his customer service is second to none, and so very, very blessed. But again, it's other things. It's we had somebody who was very, very poorly in one of the, I think it was NXT in one of the VIP suites. And what people don't see is that Cal took that person. It's literally, this person was in a real bad way and ended up having to go to the emergency room. And there's one of our team taking that person all the way there. That's the kind of things that you can't necessarily quantify by going with so you get that kind of experience with WT. Of course, if you want to nickel and dime, of course you can do things a lot cheaper. But what we're doing is we're trying to introduce you to fellow wrestling fans to be able to be part of a community in which you can make friends and enjoy it for years to come. And even now, some of the people that I experienced New York with, I see on my news feeds and still chatting away. And one guy, ironically, is a Bolton Wanderers fan, which is a massive rival to Tranmere Rovers Football Club. So some really good banter there. But that's what it's about. We're trying to bring the wrestling community together, and hopefully we're doing that, even if we're a small cog of that massive wheel.
That's awesome. And you mentioned earlier, Lee, For the Love of Wrestling. Now, it was an amazing event, wasn't it, in 2019? So much fan reaction to For the Love of Wrestling for 2019. So much so that when tickets went on sale for the 2020 show, I bought tickets on day one. So many other people were looking forward to that event. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it had to get cancelled along with everything else. But just take us back to 2019 For the Love of Wrestling, because Wrestling Travel were a big part of that, weren't they? I think it was the main promoters were Monopoly events, wasn't it? But Wrestling Travel were there. They had their own stand. They were doing interviews. You were doing interviews. You had Mad Dog as part of the team. Tell us about that whole experience.
Well, first of all, massive fair play to Andy Cleek at Monopoly Events. What Andy's doing as part of all these Comic-Cons is nothing short of incredible. Massive amount of respect for what Andy's done. And I think that for the first event, we were the perfect partners, because we'd ran the Wrestling Media Con with Paul Benson at his venue, Bowlers. But whilst we were the sponsor, the reality is that it was all my team kind of running the event. And I love Paul to pieces. I'm sure Paul would agree with that as well. So when we became the sponsor, we were also helping out as much as we could. Of course, it was Andy's show and whatnot, but just to be part of that, and then to do those interviews. But the thing is, you see, John, is that I'm a great believer in that. I wanted to help people at the same time, and you've got, at the time you had Lucy Openshaw, Kieran Moran, Mad Dog Mike Angus, and I wanted to be able to give them opportunities live on Fight TV to be able to interview some of the biggest stars the wrestling world has ever seen, because I'm a great believer again that if you're good to someone, they'll be great to you, and I've been very blessed in the fact that all those individuals have been very, very good to us, and I'd like to think that that's been a real foundation for their careers, and especially as we move out of COVID. So I'm very proud in terms of being able to offer that opportunity. Of course, at the same time, that's also a massive thank you to Andy. But then when I was asked to do the real two big interviews, which was the NWO WCW reunion and the Bret Hart to close out the show, a lot of pressure on me for that. Really, it's been a
I bet.
Since I've interviewed people. But going back to my Max Power days when working on car magazines and stuff like that, and it was quite a stressful weekend at the time, because our game against Bury had been called off, so we were dealing with all of that, and then I went straight to the exhibition centre, and then oh gosh, it was just that night downstairs with all the talent drinking and stories. I mean, my word. I mean, I think Ric Flair must have gone through 4 bottles of wine himself that night. I mean, it was absolutely insane, and and catching up with Rob Van Dam, because one of my funny little stories was at WrestleMania 32 in Dallas. I ended up missing the John Moxley or Dean Ambrose, as he was then, Brock Lesnar match, because I ended up in the VIP, and I ended up doing loads of shots of tequila with Rob Van Dam, as you do. So it was a crazy time. And then as we're in the VIP, literally next minute, we see JBL running past us. I was like, literally, I'm nipping to the loo, and I'm in the loo with JBL, and I was like, "How you doing, sir?" "I'm good, sir." I was, "Oh, you enjoying the show?" Down right, John, I'm enjoying the show. And I said, "Oh, is Taker going to win tonight?" He goes, "Taker ain't losing in Texas, son." And then literally starts running off back to the commentary booth. But what was funny was that we drank a lot of tequila, And then years later, bringing on to Full of Wrestling, I'm there with RVD, and we're chatting away, and he's like, "Bro, I feel like I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you?" And I said, "Well, the first time we probably met, mate, was we were doing shots of tequila at WrestleMania 32. He's like, "That was you?" I was like, "Yeah, that was us." And then he started telling me about what happened to him that night, which I think he's going to talk about it in his book. But that night ended up becoming a real kind of difficult time in his life, really, that he then used as a springboard to come back to now being the WWE Hall of Famer, etc., etc. And my understanding is that he talks about that night in his book, and how he woke up not knowing where he was with I think it was 3 ladies, I think, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. So then chatting that with him, and then randomly drinking a Bailey's with Ted DiBiase and telling me about Andre the Giant and all this other kind of stuff. Like, wow, this is amazing. This is so cool.
Well, I know where I want to be next time I go to WrestleMania. I want to be in the VIP box with you, Lee.
well, the thing is, WrestleMania 32, Wrestling Travel wasn't created then, and what I've always done at every WrestleMania that I've been to is I will always sit in the same seats as everybody else, and they're always good seats as well. They're always in the 100 tier. We do get requests for very special seats, and at times we've been able to do that. But yeah, it was just such a random thing, because literally RVD, there was Pat Patterson, there was Mean Gene, David Otunga. I mean, it was such a random set of people that were then talking about all these different things, and it was just a brilliant eye opener, and fantastic times.
Wrestling Travel, the logo Wrestling Travel, WT, you kind of see it pretty much everywhere. You mentioned Wrestle Carnival, Wrestling Travel Live are one of the sponsors of Wrestle Carnival. Is that right?
Yeah. So what we're doing is that, so I had a great chat with Gary, who I think is doing some really cool things with the Wrestle Carnival brand, because I appreciate, with respect to Gary, the proof's going to be in the pudding in terms of when the first show happens, but to do something that's a bit left field in terms of a circus treatment idea, it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. And when he approached me and said, "Look, we'd love to work with WT, we'd love to have our tickets as part of our WT Live platform," and I was like, "Absolutely, yeah." And I'm really excited for Gary, and I sincerely hope that Wrestle Carnival becomes a massive success. And but at the same time, you look at other organizations as well that I'm really excited for. What Jay Apter's doing with TNT is I think some really special stuff. I'm really excited to see what he's going to produce. And Jay's up for it. I don't know if you know Jay that well, but he's a character, Jay, and I really enjoy spending time with him, because he wants to become the biggest, he wants to become the best, and you know what? I think he might just get there as well.
Yeah, I think TNT, I mean, just the look, the presentation, you mentioned about, production values with WWE. TNT has some pretty good production values. They show themselves as a major production. There's nothing cheap looking about TNT, and I can't wait for them to start running shows again, because I want to get up there and sample it myself. But a quick question in relation to Wrestle Carnival, will you be there for their first show, Curtain Call, in August?
I sincerely hope so. I've got to get out of Portugal first. But
Exactly.
we're trying to get back for our playoff game against Morecambe, and that's not looking too promising at the moment for one reason or another. But yeah, I mean, I sincerely hope that I'm going to be there and give all of our love and support to Gary. It's obviously going to be a massive night for him, but I'm sure he'll do a great job.
Absolutely, and I'll definitely be there because the Johners Podcasting Network is one of the sponsors for their first show as well. So we're looking forward to Curtain Call. That's going to be a great show. I'll be there. So if you are there, we'll shake hands and I'll buy you a pint or maybe some tequilas.
I don't even know how to say hello to people these days now. It's like hello, fist bump.
You got to do the elbow. You got to do the elbow thing now, haven't you, Lee? It's got, what's that all about?
The elbows as well, pal.
I can't get my head around that at all. Let's talk about some of your other business ventures. You mentioned AmeriCamp. When did that start? And kind of just tell us a bit more about that for anybody that might be interested in going to summer camp sometime in the future, when we can actually get to America, of course. Tell us about AmeriCamp.
Well, truthfully, I was never. I really detest the word entrepreneur, Jonas. I hate it because for me, I'm just a chubby plastic scouser trying to make it in the world. But if people want to label me, whatever they want to label me, that's fine. I've definitely been called a lot worse, that's for sure. But ultimately, I was supposed to be a lawyer. Ended up in the media, working on Max Power and a load of other pretty well-known titles. But whilst I was at university, I went with what became my big, massive rival company. And to be honest with you, I thought there was a better way of doing it. And then when Nick Steer and I had the idea for Invasion Travel and what then became Invasion Camp Group, we had because we were one of the first organizations to do influencer marketing. We really, really were. And we had this campus manager who basically said, I've just been with this other organization. I've been paid X amount. And I thought there's got to be a better way of doing this, because I was helping my mates at Leeds Uni get to these summer camps without having to pay any of the fees and a much higher salary. So then one thing led to another. We created AmeriCamp in 2010, and now we've sent tens of thousands of people now to work in what is, I think, in now 47 different states. I've been invited to weddings. There's kids. There's making me feel really old, but it became a real life-changing experience. And AmeriCamp will always be my first baby, and it's a wonderful life-changing experience in that you get to experience what life's like in the States, and you're going to get to explore the likes of New York and California, etc. afterwards. So it's something I'm really, really proud of. That's for sure.
Is there a website for that? Where can we go out and find out more about AmeriCamp and what the future holds for that organization?
Well, yeah, it's americamp.co.uk, AMERICAMP.co.uk.
Brilliant. And now, Lee, as we start to wind down this interview, tell everybody or anybody that might be interested in going to wrestlingtravel.org about the packages, why they should be purchasing through you. Of course, you've got 3 packages up there at the moment: Wrestle Kingdom, WrestleMania for next year, and then, of course, WrestleMania for 2023. So tell them how they can get the ball rolling with Wrestling Travel and about some of the packages that might be available. And time to kind of plug Wrestling Travel.org then.
Well, again, really appreciate it. If you want to just literally turn up at the airport in which everything is taken care for you, Wrestling Travel is what's right for you. If you want to meet people and be part of a wrestling community in which you're hanging out with fellow wrestling fans, in which you're going to be creating friends for life, then Wrestling Travel is for you. And that's why you should pick us.
Well, I've already looked at the website. I'm very, very tempted, possibly by Dallas, but definitely for Los Angeles the following year. So I think sooner rather than later.
The hotel in Los Angeles is insane, right? When I was going around there and they were showing me all the different bits, and they said, "Oh yes, and this suite," because what we were going to do was we were going to literally for one of our sessions where random wrestlers were going to turn up. We basically hired out the suite, is what we'd done, and hadn't told anybody. Oh, we were giving too much away here now. And they were like, yes, and this suite, literally, Alicia Keys left 2 days ago. LeBron James left a week before that, and I was crazy. Yeah, it was, that was anyway. And the views are spectacular. And literally a stone's throw away from the Staples Center as well. So the LA one's going to be something special.
And you guys make it affordable as well, don't you? Whereas when I pieced all the bits together myself, it's like £1,000 here and £1,000 there, and crikey, the flights are another £1,000. But you kind of make it more affordable. There's a deposit, and then you kind of pay in monthly installments, and it all sounds very manageable, doesn't it, Lee?
Well, that's what we've tried to do, because again, it doesn't matter whether it's AmeriCamp, Wrestling Travel, Camp Thailand, Invasion.com, or any of the other brands I've worked on. What I always try and do is I try and put myself in from a book called To Kill a Mockingbird. There's a phrase in there where it says, to truly understand someone, you've got to slip inside their shoes, slip inside their skin. So if you're a business owner, you want to put yourself in the shoes of the customer, the passenger, our family member, to say, okay, well, how do I want to be treated? What do I want? And that's come with time in terms of where we're at now. But that's what I try and do for every single thing that I create, and that's not too dissimilar for WT, or dare I say it, anything new that I will create in the future.
Indeed. Well, Lee, we're going to leave it there. So hopefully you'll kind of get back to the UK from Portugal at some point this year. We've got to see you in August in Nottingham for Wrestle Carnival. But thank you very much, my friend. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Jonas. Thanks so much, and take care, stay safe, and see you soon.
Take care, buddy.